Hey everyone, John Henry here, slingshotfutures.com. Today we're going to be talking about seasonal trends. Now, seasonal trends, these are more likely to happen on markets that have seasonality to it. Think natural gas going into the winter. A lot of people start using more heat, and therefore, well, you would anticipate that natural gas prices would increase. That would be a seasonal trend. Now, other markets do share seasonal trends. As an example, agriculture's. Obviously, you can't really grow a whole lot in December if you're living in the northern states. So, weather plays a part in all of that. So there's a lot of seasonality to several different markets. But one of the most notable ones is definitely going to be natural gas. The agricultural markets do definitely play a role. Gasoline futures, as an example, they're going to be increased usually seasonally in the summer months because more people are driving during the summer and decreased in the winter, etc. So what do I mean by seasonal trends? Generally speaking, when we're talking about seasonal trends, we have this is a longer term move. This is something that can last a few months. This is something that can happen, in December. It can happen in October. It's relatively variable, but it generally does the same thing every season. Generally, okay? We're talking about the markets. Nothing is ever 100%. But if we look at a big picture on natural gas here, this is the natural gas futures. Now, you'll notice one very common thing, first of all, before even looking at the chart. What would be the mindset of natural gas if we were talking seasonality? Generally speaking, the world starts cooling off, around October or so you would anticipate seeing something like this in October, right? Well, starting in October or around there, because things are getting colder, people are using more heat in their homes, etc. You kind of get the idea. So during that, October to December sort of window, you'll usually see an increase in price, whereas, other times, like in the middle of summer, it's probably going to be doing something like this, because not really many people are using a whole lot of natural gas when it's really, really nice out. Now, obviously, there are several other uses for natural gas. This isn't the only one, but because so many people heat their homes, you would anticipate seeing a relatively large increase during those times and a decrease during the off season. So looking at the chart, we can see exactly that. Coming off of the backs of 2018, obviously starting into 2019 now, we started at the end of the month. Let's see here, right around October. So my marker right there is on October, and you'll notice I had a very steep increase in price. If we go back to the previous year, starting in October, this is not as noticeable as the most recent year, but we can see that there were several very nice lifts to the upside late into the 2017. If we go into 2016, we can see starting in October, we had a little bit of a sell-off followed by a very sharp increase in price. So it's very common to see when you're looking at this type of seasonality that you're going to see an increase in price. And generally speaking, as you go into warmer months when less and less people are using natural gas, then you're going to run into a little bit of a downturn. When there's less demand for something, the prices generally go down so more people buy it. Now, keep in mind, a lot of companies stockpile natural gas. They buy it when it's cheap, and then they hold on to it and utilize it during the winter season to kind of offset cost, because pretty much everybody knows natural gas prices are probably going to go up as you get colder. It's like when you're at the gas station a couple days before a holiday or a couple days after a holiday and gas jumps up 30 or 40 cents. Well, I don't think anybody was really surprised by that, right? Kind of the same mentality here. So as we go into the warmer months, generally speaking, depending on where you live, you could be talking as early as April, or you might have to wait until May, and sometimes even June if you're living real far north. So if we start off looking at April, obviously we're not there yet in 2019, but if we look at April, we can see over past 2018 at least, we had a very sideways range-bound action. There just wasn't a whole lot happening on natural gas. It was pretty dead. There's nothing going on because not many people are using it. And this is an accumulation phase for larger funds, businesses, etc., who are accumulating natural gas to use during those winter seasons. So you'll usually see either a downturn or the market stagnating because, people are buying and holding and stockpiling, etc. So this is something that happens over and over and over and over again. Now, the hard part is, when is it going to happen? Sometimes it happens right in October. Sometimes it happens a long time after. It really just kind of depends on, what the market is looking like structure-wise and just kind of getting a general feel for things. As an example, when we were going into the summer months and things were slowing down over in 2018, well, where were we? Structurally, we were at a major impasse. We were at a big area of interest that buyers were buying into and accumulating the lows. So it's no surprise that the sellers failed to break down, because buyers know that they're going to need natural gas in October through December and later anyway, and it's cheap, right? We're at a structural level of importance. This would give you an idea that, well, generally speaking, you're probably going to see an increase in price off of this area for a seasonal trend. Now, this seasonality actually started occurring in this case as early as, we're talking February. February through March. That was that whole accumulation phase, and it really didn't start flying higher in 2018 until around October, arguably September. So this is definitely not something you're looking to do an overnight trade on. This is a long-term trade. But when you can stack up several factors like being at a large area of support and understanding seasonality, well, that makes a lot of sense why a lot of buyers would be accumulating here to try to push the market up. And as it starts going into October, November, December, as prices increasing really, really aggressively, everybody knows that guess what's around the corner, right? A couple months later, we're going to start warming up and less people are going to be using this, so they start selling into this strength. And that's kind of the idea behind seasonal trends. Now, other markets don't necessarily have as strong of a seasonal trend, like we were talking about gasoline futures or agricultural futures. These, the big reason why agricultural futures doesn't immediately pop up on the list of seasonal trends is primarily because, well, they're grown all over the place. But along with that, it's more impacted by weather, right? So when we're talking about seasonal trends, you could kind of break that down into weather. But if you're having a really bad, hurricane or really bad storms, or something is going on that's tearing through a major crop producing part of the world or part of the US or whatever, that's going to naturally have an impact on a seasonality type of aspect of those markets. We have been pretty battered in terms of storms over the last couple of years, and you can definitely see that reflected in the pricing, because a lot of traders will hedge early on, knowing that, well, we've been having really horrible weather. It might be a good idea to hedge for potential downturns, and you'll start seeing traders who are actually looking to sell short with the assumption that they want to have the capability of selling their crops. Remember, if you're a crop producer and you sell a contract, that's giving you the right to sell it. And if you're selling it when it's at a major level of structural importance, just like we were talking about with seasonality, it's going to make a pretty big difference. So let's say as an example, obviously there's some major structure coming across here, and you have a big farm of soybeans, and you're coming up into that area of interest knowing that, hey, we're going into March, April, May. When does storm season start, right? We're starting to go into storm season June, July, and guess what happens, right? The market starts tanking down. A lot of traders will use this opportunity, especially if they're big owners of farms or any type of industrial growth type of businesses. They're going to start to look to sell short, because that's locking in their capability of being able to sell at these prices, with the understanding that seasonal trends will likely take place when the weather is very bad, or generally very bad, taking a downturn on those markets. So even though the market's down here, if they bought a contract to be able to sell it at 1060, well, guess what? They're feeling pretty good, right? So that's what I mean by seasonality. These are the things that you don't necessarily have to think about when you're talking about the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ or any of those, even though they do have their own seasonal trends. But this is something that is much more pronounced. This is a very obvious seasonal trend that basically anybody with, some common sense could figure out. Well, hey, wait a minute, it's getting colder. Natural gas is probably getting expensive. But the important part here, and the reason why I'm going over seasonal trends, is because you can use this to anticipate forward movement that's going to happen months in advance. That's more thinking like a trader, right? Everybody knows in December gas prices for natural gas are going to be higher, but if you're in an area of structural importance coming into February, March, April, a little bit more logic would say that, hey, there's a good chance that this might increase in price over the next couple months. You may be able to find some option contracts, you may be able to find some long-term, further out expirations of them to buy or sell into, so you don't have to worry about rollover or anything like that. These are things that you need to be thinking of if you're trading in more of these seasonal markets. So something to keep in mind when you're looking at your natural gas or soybean futures or corn or wheat or any of the other ones. And really just, kind of something that, you may have been looking at for a long time but just didn't really kind of realize what was happening. It gives you a definite clue in terms of what to expect for future price movement. That's going to do it for this one. I hope you found it useful, interesting, entertaining, something you can add to your tool belt if you're a trader of seasonal trends. And that's going to do it. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, jbrink@slingshotfutures.com. Underneath the video, click on subscribe, click on the thumbs up button, and click the notification bell icon, all of them, so that you don't miss anything important. You show that you like the content, and that way you're also notified whenever a new video comes out, so you don't miss any of them with some potential money-saving tips and tricks or potential trade ideas or concepts coming out of the pipes. So that's going to do it. As always, I hope you had a fantastic day of trading, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.